"This lounge is for real customers only." The receptionist snapped at Emily, her voice sharp with dismissal. 6 months pregnant and a 12-year Army veteran, Emily sat quietly in the corner of the dealership, waiting for anyone, to acknowledge her presence. No one did. Emily Kent, 35, had served as a communications specialist in the Army for 12 years, maintaining crucial battlefield connections in the harshest conditions of Afghanistan and Iraq. When lives hung in the balance of a clear transmission, Emily's steady hands and focused mind never failed her unit. Since retiring 3 years ago with honors, she lived modestly in a small house on the edge of town, volunteering 3 days a week at the local Veterans Center, helping younger veterans navigate the maze of benefits they'd earned with their service. Now 6 months pregnant with her first child, Emily needed a reliable vehicle. Her neighbor Diane had offered to drive her to Westside Motors that crisp October morning. After years of careful saving, Emily had finally accumulated enough for a sensible used car. Nothing fancy, just something reliable to safely transport her baby and get her to prenatal appointments when winter made walking impossible. Dressed in a simple navy maternity dress, comfortable flats, and her warm but cherished veteran's cap, Emily entered the gleaming showroom with its polished floors reflecting the fluorescent lights above. The smell of new leather and ambition filled the air. No one greeted her. Not one of the 6 salespeople clustered around their desks bothered to look up or acknowledge her presence. She found a seat near the coffee machine and waited patiently, the way military service had taught her. One hand rested protectively over her growing belly, while the other adjusted her veteran's cap, a small dignity she carried from her service days. Emily smiled politely at each salesperson who passed by. Not one stopped or returned her smile. They moved around her like water flowed around a stone in a stream, present but irrelevant. Each time the door opened, the sales team perked up, only to deflate visibly upon seeing customers they deemed more promising than a pregnant woman sitting alone. A young receptionist with immaculate nails and perfectly styled hair finally noticed Emily and approached with a scowl etched into her features. "This area is for customers who are serious about purchasing," she said, emphasizing the last words in a way that suggested Emily was anything but. Her gaze lingered pointedly on Emily's pregnant belly. "I'm here to buy a car," Emily replied calmly, her military discipline evident in her measured tone. One hand remained protectively over her belly, while the other rested on her knee. The receptionist looked her up and down, taking in the modest maternity dress and veteran's cap. "Shouldn't your husband be handling this?" she asked with poorly disguised condescension. "Car buying can be complicated. I handled communications equipment worth millions during artillery fire in Kandahar," Emily replied evenly. "I believe I can manage a car purchase." The receptionist's lips thinned. "Someone will help you. Eventually," she replied, the pause speaking volumes about her assessment of Emily's worth as a customer. In the corner of the showroom, visible through a glass partition, 3 salesmen clustered around a desk, occasionally glancing toward Emily and chuckling among themselves. "That pregnant lady's been sitting there forever," one said, adjusting his silk tie. "Probably just taking a break from walking." Another, younger but equally dismissive, joked. $10, says she can't afford anything more than a bus pass." The third salesman, older with graying temples, snorted. "These military types always want special treatment. Bet she's hoping for some thank you for your service discount." The receptionist rolled her eyes as she joined their circle. "She's probably just here to rest her feet and enjoy the air conditioning. We get these types sometimes. They wander and looking for somewhere comfortable to sit." Outside in the service bay, a younger salesman named Greg watched the scene through the showroom windows. Something about the situation didn't sit right with him, a discomfort he couldn't quite name settling in his chest. "Are you sure she's not here to buy?" Greg asked when he stepped inside for a clipboard. "She's been waiting a long time." "Trust me," replied the sales manager with a condescending smirk. "I've been doing this 20 years. You don't make commission off people like her. She's not worth your time." Greg frowned, noticing how Emily occasionally shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable from sitting so long with her pregnant belly, yet maintaining the straight posture that marked military personnel everywhere. "But she's wearing a veteran's cap," Greg pressed. "All the more reason," the manager replied. "Veterans always want discounts they can't afford. And pregnant women never make decisions without consulting husbands. Double waste of time. Emily, still waiting in her corner seat, took out a small worn notebook from her purse. She began sketching quietly. An old habit from deployment when waiting was as much a part of service as action. On one page, precise diagrams of communications equipment. On the facing page, a layout for the baby's nursery. 2 worlds merging in blue ink. 40 minutes passed, marked by the slow ticking of the wall clock. Emily sat patiently, not one to cause a fuss. That wasn't her way, never had been. Not even when mortars exploded overhead, and everyone depended on her maintaining communications. Her back ached from pregnancy and sitting in the uncomfortable chair, but years of military discipline kept her posture straight and her complaints silent. In the corner of her wallet was a faded photograph. Emily and her unit standing beside their commander, Captain Sara Miller, now Colonel Miller. The photo was worn at the edges from being handled so often, a talisman from a time when her expertise was valued, when her voice was heard. She glanced at it briefly, drawing strength from the memory. No one asked about her story. No one offered water. No one cared that beneath her maternity dress, a scar ran across her shoulder from shrapnel that had torn into her flesh while she maintained communications during an ambush. No one noticed her hand occasionally reaching to massage her lower back, where pregnancy strained muscles already tested by years, carrying heavy communications equipment through mountain terrain. Emily sighed, folded her callous hands over her belly, and stayed quiet, like soldiers often do when the world forgets their sacrifice. In the manager's office, the sales team had grown even more dismissive. That pregnant veteran sitting there almost an hour, the sales manager said, peering through the blinds. Probably doesn't even have her own bank account. Maybe she thinks we'll give her a military discount on a luxury SUV. Another salesman laughed. As if veteran status covers the down payment. Pregnant women are the worst customers anyway, added the receptionist. They get all emotional about safety ratings and then say they need to think about it, which means ask their husband. The older salesman snorted. And she'll probably want us to install a car seat too. Greg had heard enough. My sister served 2 tours in Iraq, he said quietly. She deserves better than this. Your sister isn't trying to waste our time, the manager replied sharply. Go make yourself useful with real customers. Outside in the showroom, Emily's discomfort was becoming harder to disguise. Her lower back throbbed and the baby was active, delivering little kicks as if protesting the long wait. She placed both hands on her belly, whispering softly, Easy there, little soldier, just a bit longer. She checked her watch, 40 minutes now, and considered leaving. The military had taught her the value of strategic retreat, as well as perseverance. But she needed this car, needed the safety and reliability for her baby, for the winter ahead, for the future she was building. So she stayed, drawing on the same patience that had kept her focused during 18-hour communication shifts when lives depended on her attention to detail. Emily opened her notebook again, adding more details to the nursery sketch. A small American flag in the corner, a shelf for books about brave women, a communications-themed mobile hanging above the crib, because some parts of her military life were worth passing on. Suddenly, the ambient noise of the showroom, the murmur of sales pitches, the ringing phones, the coffee machine's burble, all faded to silence. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside, its polished surface reflecting the midday sun. Out stepped a woman in a perfectly tailored business suit, confident and commanding with military posture that no amount of civilian life could erase. Colonel Sara Miller, now a retired military officer and successful businesswoman whose communications company supplied equipment to half the eastern seaboard, walked in, her presence immediately filling the room. She scanned the faces before her until her gaze settled on Emily. "Sergeant Kent," she boomed, her voice carrying the authority of a woman accustomed to being heard the first time. "Emily Kent, is that you?" Heads turned. Salesmen froze mid-conversation. The receptionist's fingers halted over her keyboard as Colonel Miller strode across the floor and embraced Emily like a sister. Colonel, Emily said, struggling to stand with her pregnant belly. "Stay seated, Sergeant. Miller said with a warm smile before her eyes widened. "You're expecting. Congratulations." The receptionist stammered. You know her?" Miller turned, her eyes hardening. "Know her? This woman saved my life twice. Once with her radio skills when our position was about to be overrun and enemy fire had damaged our communications equipment, and once by dragging me a half-mile with a bullet in her own shoulder." The sales manager stepped forward, suddenly attentive. "Ma'am, we had no idea." That, Miller cut him off, is precisely the problem. Did anyone here bother to ask who she was? Did anyone notice her veteran's cap? Or were you all too busy judging a pregnant woman to see the soldier beneath? The sales manager tugged at his tie nervously. "We didn't know she was a decorated veteran." "But you didn't ask either, did you?" Miller replied, her gaze unwavering. "You saw a pregnant woman in modest clothes and decided her story wasn't worth knowing." The showroom remained silent, the air heavy with collective shame and the sudden realization that they had badly misjudged the situation. Miller turned back to Emily. "How long have they kept you waiting?" 40 minutes, Colonel," Emily replied quietly, military precision in her answer despite the circumstances. "But I'm used to waiting." "Not anymore, you're not," Miller said firmly. Miller pulled out her phone and made one call, speaking in terse, efficient phrases that everyone strained to hear but couldn't quite catch. 15 minutes later, while Emily and Miller caught up over coffee that the receptionist had hurriedly provided, two men in expensive suits entered. They carried leather portfolios and spoke briefly, but intensely with the general manager, whose face gradually drained of color as the conversation progressed. When they finished, Miller stood and addressed the now gathered staff. "For those wondering what just happened, I've purchased a majority stake in this dealership," she announced, her voice crisp and authoritative. "Effective immediately, I'm the primary owner." The staff gasped collectively. The sales manager's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor, the sound punctuating the shock that filled the room. "First order of business," Miller continued, her voice carrying the same authority it had in combat zones. "Emily gets any car on this lot. No payments, no paperwork. It's the least we can do for a woman who kept countless soldiers alive with her communication skills." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Second, everyone here gets retrained in how to treat customers, all customers, with dignity and respect, or they get replaced. Starting today." She turned to Emily, her tone softening. "Pick your ride, Sergeant. Whatever speaks to you." Emily blinked, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. One hand rested protectively on her belly. "I just came for something reliable for the baby. Nothing fancy." "Then you'll get the most reliable vehicle on this lot," Miller replied. "That's an order, Sergeant." Greg, the young salesman who had questioned his colleagues earlier, stepped forward from the crowd. "Ma'am, if it's all right with everyone, I'd be honored to help Miss Kent find exactly what she and her baby need." Emily's face softened into a smile. "I'd appreciate that." As they walked toward the family vehicle section, whispers spread through the remaining staff. By evening, the story had escaped the confines of the dealership. Pregnant veteran ignored at dealership. Former commander returns and buys the place. Veteran groups reposted it. Military family pages shared it. The story trended nationwide, tapping into a collective sense that some debts can never be fully repaid but must always be acknowledged. That evening, as the sun set, Miller and Emily stood outside the lot, watching as workers installed a new sign above the entrance. "Kent and Miller Motors, built on respect." "Never thought I'd be in the car business," Emily said quietly, her hand resting on her belly. "Neither did I," Miller replied, "but some partnerships are forged for life." The next morning, Emily returned to the dealership driving a brand new SUV with an understated American flag decal on the back window. She parked in the same spot she had been dropped off the day before, walked to the same door, but this time every employee stood and greeted her with genuine respect. Greg approached with a steaming cup. "Decaf tea, right? I asked about what pregnant veterans might prefer." Emily chuckled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Someone's been paying attention. The receptionist, now reassigned as a trainee in customer relations, nodded silently from her new desk. her expression a mixture of embarrassment and newfound understanding. At the end of the day, as Emily prepared to leave, she passed by a group of customers. A young woman in a maternity top with a small veteran's pin on her collar stopped her. "Ma'am, I saw the story online," she said. "Thank you for what you did back then and yesterday." Emily just nodded, her hand briefly touching the younger veteran's shoulder. "No voice unheard," she said softly. That phrase later appeared on the wall behind the reception desk in bold bronze letters that caught the morning light. The dealership became known throughout the region as a place where veterans, especially women veterans, were treated with special care, not because of policy, but because of a lesson learned the hard way about judging worth by appearance. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We respect every experience shared here. Have you witnessed pregnant veterans facing similar challenges, or experienced discrimination based on service or pregnancy? Your experiences matter, and every comment helps raise awareness about the unique struggles and incredible strength of pregnant veterans. Subscribe for more powerful stories that honor those who serve both country and family.